We're going from probably the most common diseases just talked about between heart failure and AFib and diabetes to one of the most rare, which is chordoma. We talked about metastases on Thursday, which is 20% of the cancer population. This is 1 in a million, literally, that has chordoma, but it captures the imagination of the spine tumor and certainly oncology because it's the only tumor that's spine specific. And so we're wholly responsible for how we treat this disease and potentially how we cure it. The Enneking Classification was developed in 1977 to determine the treatment for musculoskeletal tumors of the extremity, and it was stratified by stages for surgical management. For high-grade malignancy, we needed an en bloc for radical or wide margins. For a low-grade malignancy or aggressive benign, en bloc for marginal margins, and then for benign curettage intralesional, and it provided guidelines for adjuvant therapy. Enneking in 1988 said the surgeon must meet 2 sometimes conflicting goals. One is local control, and the other is preservation of function. The risk of recurrence must be weighed against the benefit of retained function. The surgeon's expertise, the availability of effective adjuvant therapy, and other factors lead to the final choice of the operation. It wasn't really until the 1990s that the Enneking Classification was applied to chordoma, and it was really launched by the WBB classification, which Alex talked about on Thursday, which gave a roadmap for how we en bloc excise these tumors. And universally, the treatment for chordoma across the world became en bloc excision with no adjuvant therapy. It turns out, however, that the long-term outcomes showed substantial morbidity and actually poor local tumor control or cure. And the reason for that are multifold. It's very difficult to get a wide en bloc excision in a tumor like this, a C2 chordoma, with extensive epidural disease and bilateral vertebral artery involvement. Additionally, this is a patient with a chordoma in the sacrum that was en bloc resected for wide margins, lost bowel and bladder function. Closest margin was 3 millimeters, but at a year, there was metastatic disease, the piriformis and gluteal muscles. Why? Just because you can en bloc for a wide excision, there's microscopic satellite lesions outside the gross tumor volume that you can't account for in your surgical excision. This is reflected in our series from Memorial of 43 patients that underwent en bloc excisions, 63% of which were wide. The 5-year recurrence rates were 66%. They did better with wide excision, but remember, the intent was to get a wide en bloc on all these patients, and yet for a significant number of them, they were intralesional or marginal, and even with the wide excision, we still had significant recurrences because of those satellite lesions. Here's a series of multi-institutional retrospective review from AO Spine Forum of 166 patients, this time not of the sacrum, but the mobile spine chordoma, looking at whether this Enneking appropriate en bloc for marginal or wide resections would significantly improve outcomes compared to what they called Enneking inappropriate, which was an intralesional resection. Now, in their series, they actually included patients who had prior tumor operations and came to them with recurrence. In terms of the Enneking appropriate versus inappropriate, 59% of patients had an intralesional excision versus 41% had an en bloc wide or marginal excision. Adjuvant therapy was a simple yes/no. 51% received adjuvant therapy. Local recurrences were seen in 35% of patients. In a univariate analysis, it turns out the tumor volume had no impact on outcomes. If you had a marginal or wide en bloc excision or so-called Enneking appropriate, there was a 15% risk of recurrent tumor versus if you had an intralesional or Enneking inappropriate, a 50% risk of recurrence. Interestingly, adjuvant therapy was a negative prognostic factor in terms of recurrence. And if you look at this, this curve, it becomes very clear that patients with mobile spine chordoma, at least according to AO, should have an en bloc excision for wide or marginal margins. The problem is that the data in this was not very robust, and the analysis was actually horrifying, at least to me. Prognostic variables, in every single series that looked at chordoma outcomes, size was a significant impact on outcomes. If you look at, if you don't stratify by whether the tumor was intra or extracompartmental, it really confounds the data significantly. Intracompartmental tumors, bone only, are often notochordal rests, which are hemartomas and not actually chordoma. And without central path review, there's no way to tell, and certainly the patients with, that were intracompartmental in the vertebral body only were more likely to get an Enneking appropriate resection. The Enneking inappropriate, more likely to have extracompartmental tumor into the muscle and epidural space. And again, they're high risk for unaccounted skip lesions and epidural tumor constraints to intralesional resection. There's a loss to follow-up that underestimated recurrence. In the EA group, there was a 30% loss to follow-up at each time point. The median follow-up was 2 years, and the median time to first local recurrence, however, was 5.3 years. 62% of the patients in the Enneking inappropriate group actually had operations outside and presented with recurrence. You significantly bias the recurrent disease, the chances of having a recurrent disease in patients who are operated for recurrence, and you don't actually know the denominator of all those patients who were treated in the community with EI resections who never recurred and had to come to a tertiary center. Adjuvant radiation, again, the highest risk patients are going to get radiation therapy, and you can't simply ask that as a yes-no question. It doesn't account for the difference between conventional external beam radiation at 30 gray and 10 fractions that we talked about versus protons, carbon ions, or SBRT. And according to Enneking's original consideration, there's no discussion of morbidity in this series. The question is whether we can get to a high enough dose to actually treat chordomas with radiation in a meaningful way. And it turns out when you use conventionally fractionated radiation, 1.8 to 2 gray per fraction, you need up to 70 gray to effectively treat a chordoma. And the problem traditionally has been the spinal cord tolerance is significantly under that. The TD55, 5% of patients getting a toxic dose at 5 years is 50 gray for a 5 to 10 centimeter length of cord. And so we had to develop strategies that you could actually give an ablative dose of radiation within cord tolerance. And there were a number of strategies to do this. Proton beam uses a Bragg peak effect. It's charged particles and typically given as conventional radiation, 70 gray and 2 gray per fraction. Carbon ions, more recently developed in Japan, uses a Bragg peak as well, often given as hypofractionated radiation, 70 gray and 5 gray per fraction. And then IGRT, image-guided radiation using photon beam therapy, can be delivered as conventionally fractionated 70 gray and 2 gray per fraction, hypofractionated 30 gray and 10 gray per fraction, or what we like, high-dose single fraction 24 gray. And then we have the option of giving intraoperative radiation therapy as well. And once you determine that you can give an ablative dose, the question becomes when do you give it, as a postoperative adjuvant or neoadjuvant or definitive radiation. It turns out that in many cancers, we actually do what's called neoadjuvant, upfront radiation before resection, because tubercle response equates to a better chance of cure or local control. Certainly in osteogenic sarcoma, as Alex discussed on Thursday, all patients get preoperative chemotherapy, and it turns out that the amount of necrosis that you get from the chemotherapy determines the outcome over whether you got an en bloc resection. Superior sulcus tumors are probably the most similar to chordoma. They often involve the spine and lower trunk of the brachial plexus. They're very difficult to en bloc resect for wide margins. When we did en bloc resections as a standalone, we had 15% 5-year cures. When we added cisplatin, etoposide, and preoperative radiation, the cure rates went to 60% 5 years. So we were doing the same operation of en bloc excision, but adding neoadjuvant chemoradiation significantly improves survival. As high-risk neuroblastoma and germ cell tumor all get preoperative chemotherapy before resection. And ideally, significant necrosis that you get from this preoperative treatment may decrease the need for en bloc resection, and you can account for those microscopic and skip lesions that are outside the gross tumor volume. Harvard's been very interested in this for a number of years. Here's a series of 126 patients of thoracolumbar and sacrococcygeal chordoma. They gave a preoperative dose up to 50.4 gray mixed protons and photons. They then took the patients to surgery and postoperatively brought them to a total dose of 77.4 gray. The local control at 5 years was 62%, which is better than what we did with sacral chordoma with no neoadjuvant radiation. Primary tumors at primary resection did much better than if you were operating for recurrence. The 5-year local control rates for en bloc versus intralesional were significantly better, 72% en bloc resection versus 55% intralesional, and the local control if they got preoperative radiation was 89% versus 56% if they got no radiation therapy. In multivariate analysis, the only significant factor that impacted tumor control was actually whether they got an en bloc excision. They noted in their series that in patients who with primary chordoma undergoing preoperative radiation, en bloc resection, and postoperative RT had the highest rate of tumor control, and in fact, they saw no recurrences in that patient population. The big problem with using neoadjuvant protons is that a significant amount of the energy is released to target, which means it goes to the back in your operative quarter, so their wound infection dehiscence rates are significantly high. Here's a question we had to ask was how much of it was actually from the en bloc resection and how much from the neoadjuvant therapy. And in the same institution from Harvard, 2 years later, they published this series of patients treated with definitive mixed protons and photons to a total dose of 77 gray with no resection. And the local disease control at 5 years was 85.4%. So essentially, you're getting 15% better control adding an en bloc resection to that with that significant morbidity. And that's pretty compelling that these tumors are pretty sensitive to proton beam therapy alone. Here's some of the carbon ion data out of Japan, a series of 34 patients. They got 73 gray and 16 fractions, 94% local control at 5 years with no resection. And again, they have significant skin toxicity related to carbon ions coming through the posterior wound. So that made us look a little bit harder at whether we could treat with radiosurgery, with high-dose conformal photon therapy. And this was our original case of a patient with an L3 chordoma that was simply too sick for an en bloc resection. It was basically an intracompartmental tumor. We gave 24 gray single fraction. At 2 months, we biopsied him at the time of kyphoplasty, and he still had active disease. At 4 months, we took him to surgery for what we thought was progression, and he had 99.9% necrosis of the tumor. So it was very clear that 24 gray may be an ablative dose for chordoma. So we've now looked at a series of 35 patients with de novo chordoma, the mobile spine and sacrum, who received single fraction radiation between 2006 and 2017. In this series, about half were mobile spine and half were in the sacrum. In terms of surgery, about a third of patients had no surgery at all and got definitive radiation. A third of patients had an intralesional, either curettage, gross total, or simple separation surgery, and then a third of patients had en bloc resection. In terms of the radiation, a third had neoadjuvant, so upfront radiation followed by resection. A third had it definitive with no surgery following the radiation, and then a third got it as postoperative, and the intended dose was 24 gray to the tumor volume. These patients do survive a long time. The 5-year overall survival was 84%. In terms of our local recurrence-free survival, at 5 years overall, it was 80.5%. But if they got that 24 gray dose, it was almost 90% 5-year local recurrence-free survival. There was a significant difference between 24 gray and less than 24 gray, but what was most significant is it didn't matter whether you used it as definitive radiation, you did an intralesional separation surgery or gross total, or you got an en bloc resection. The outcomes were solely defined by the dose of radiation and not whether you got any other therapy in terms of surgery. Here's a patient, 62-year-old, presented with adenophagia secondary to the C3 chordoma, C3 burst fracture with a large paraspinal mass. The patient got single fraction 24 gray with planned resection at 3 months. So this was given as neoadjuvant, but the patient never progressed. Here's a 3-year follow-up film with no evidence of tumor. Here's a patient with a chordoma. Again, this was precluded from resection based on medical comorbidities. Patient got 24 gray single fraction. This is the 4-month follow-up film, and you can see the significant amount of necrosis in the follow-up film at 4 months. Here's a 57-year-old female with a 6-month history of hand clumsiness, C5-6 vertebral body disease with high-grade cord compression. She underwent an intralesional gross total resection followed by 24 gray single fraction. In the lower, here you can see the significant epidural disease that again precludes an en bloc resection for wide margins. Here's the post-op resection, and here's her 5-year follow-up film with no evidence of tumor. Here's a 74-year-old with an L2 chordoma, has a compression fracture but significant epidural disease. Here's a thecal sac with significant epidural disease. Again, it precludes an en bloc resection for wide margins. We did simple separation surgery. We took the disease out of the epidural space, took this patient to 24 gray single fraction. Here's a 2-year post-op SRS, 2 years post-SRS, again, with no evidence of tumor. Surgical complications in this series were mostly related to en bloc resection for the sacral chordomas. Radiation complications were mostly grade 1 and 2. The most significant complication we had was actually secondary malignancy related to the radiation, which is really complicated for us because we gave them a worse problem than they started with, but it was a single patient, and we'll look at that more closely as time goes on. What we're looking for is not better resection, but actually making better targets for the radiation. We do a lot of temporary organ displacement. This is an 80-year-old with sacral chordoma that had been previously resected and came out with this massively large recurrent disease that was plastered to the bowel. Instead of going in and taking tumor off the bowel, we simply put percutaneous catheters into the retroperitoneum, infuse saline, and you can see the tumor here. The bowel was plastered to the tumor. With the same saline bolus, we displaced the bowel about 5 centimeters, making a much better target for the radiation so that we can give an ablative dose to the tumor and stay within constraints of bowel tolerance. Our bigger problem may actually now be the esophagus, especially at cervicothoracic junction. It's very difficult to displace this, obviously, with saline, but we had our thoracic surgeon go in thoracoscopically. Here was a chordoma, here's the esophagus, which is way too close to give an ablative dose to the entire tumor volume. And so they went in with a thoracoscope, placed hydrogel between the bone, esophagus, and the chordoma to displace that esophagus 2 or 3 centimeters to make a much better target for the radiation, again, allowing us to give an ablative dose to the tumor while sparing esophageal constraints. In every malignancy that we know of, we have to have systemic therapy as well, and especially in chordoma. Pardon me, it's well known that these people will progress over time with metastatic disease, about 70% met out at 10 years. And it's been very hard to figure out a strategy for that. Most of the stuff that we've tried has not worked very well. And, pardon me. And it turns out that part of the reason is that there's been a lot of focus on this brachyury SNP that's ubiquitous in chordoma, but it turns out that it's in 50% of the population. And what we think is that the driver for this is actually a histone protein, an epigenetic driver. And this may be a targetable mutation and give us a way to develop a biologic specifically for chordoma. So sorry, thanks, man. Just 2 seconds. The secondary issue is, and what we may be more interested in is what we touched on a little bit on Thursday, is that there's a lot of PD-L1 receptors in chordoma, which makes them probably an immunogenic target. When we do radiosurgery, we promote T-cell mediated cytotoxicity, and in combination with these checkpoint inhibitors, either CTLA-4 or PD-1 inhibitors, we get an enhanced cytotoxic T-cell response, which gives us 2 things. One is better local tumor control, and the second is this abscopal effect, where you keep a patient on a checkpoint inhibitor, and if you add radiation, you can actually see their systemic disease get better. I showed this before, but this is very similar to a chordoma. This was a large renal cell that had been twice irradiated. The patient was on Nivo-Ipi, and they couldn't irradiate the entire tumor volume, so they irradiated the central core 9 grade times 3. You can see this massive tumor, and at 2 months, the tumor completely involuted, and the DCE images went cold. So we think this combination may be very powerful for large chordomas. And then you're going to face this if you do enough chordomas. This is a patient with a claval tumor who had multiple metastatic deposits, including very high-grade cord compression at C2. We couldn't get to this through separation surgery, so we did transmandibular osteotomy, occipital-cervical fusion, and took out as much disease as we can. But ultimately, we can't irradiate all those sites. And again, we may be able to use a combination of checkpoint inhibitors with radiation to induce this abscopal effect, local radiation that impacts systemic disease control. There are a number of chordoma protocols going on throughout the world. Most of them are looking at brachyury vaccines. We're very interested in combination SRS with checkpoint inhibitors and have an active protocol with Nivo plus SRS for recurrent disease. So ultimately, I think en bloc for wide margins is really constrained in most of these patients because of significant anatomic constraints and skip and satellite lesions. Bigger surgery is not always better. We just need a better mousetrap, and that includes the incorporation of radiation, either SBRT, protons, or carbon ions. And ultimately, we need systemic therapy, biologics, which we think are going to target an epigenetic driver, and radiation sensitizers, these TKI, VEGF inhibitors, or checkpoint inhibitors, to ultimately improve these patients' survival and local tumor control, and ultimately systemic control. Thank you.